We're looking at question 76 in the AP Statistics Midterm Review packet, and for this one, it's a really good one to pay attention to because of the word independent. We're going to look at what does that mean with probability, because there's actually three characteristics that we can identify. Now this one we're told there's two events. We're told event A has probability of 0.3 and event B has probability of 0.4. Now the most important part here is the idea of A and B are independent. You were told if A and B are independent, what can we conclude? So that phrase, independent, has some characteristics that we're going to look at. Like I said, there's three of them that we're going to do. And so the first thing, when we're told independent, that means the probability of event A is going to be equal to the probability of event A given B. So that is the formula aspect for the first characteristic. Probability of A equals probability of A given B. Now in words, what that means is we are dealing with the probability of A not being impacted by the probability of event B occurring first. So event A is not impacted if event B occurs first. That's what that first characteristic means. So that's how you test if two things are independent, by the way, is you check what's the probability of A, calculate the probability of A given B. If those are equal to each other, then they are independent. If they are not equal to each other, they're not independent. Now, if this is true about probability of A being equal to probability of A given B, then it has to also be true for probability of B with probability of B given A. So if number one is true, then we have to go through the other perspective. So this also means the same thing, but kind of flipped, is event A is not going to impact the probability of event B. So the probability of event B is not impacted by the fact that event A occurred first. And that's the same exact idea. So if I want to know if event A and B are independent, I can calculate the probability of B, then calculate the probability of B given that event A occurred first. And if they're equal, they're independent. If they're not equal, then they're not independent. And so then we're on to the third one. And the reason why I saved this third one for last is this is the one most people tend to forget. When we talk about independence, it's choices 1 and 2 over to their side that people do remember. But there is a really, really, really important rule that we learned with probability that is based off of two events being independent. And that's the multiplication rule. If two events are independent of each other, then we can find the probability of both events, event A and B, occurring by multiplying their individual probabilities together. So the probability of event A and B is going to be equal to the probability of A times the probability of B. And so really what this means, if I were to do this one, I could see that I have the probability of A and B. This would be 0.3 times 0.4. That would equal 0.12. And so notice choice A. Choice A says the probability of A and B is 0.12. That is true. So I know this one is true. Probability of A given B equals 0.3. So let's go to characteristic number 1 here. Probability of A given B is 0.3. Then what's the probability of A? Probability of A is 0.3. Are those equal to each other? And the answer is yes, they are. So that means that this is also true. Probability of B given A equals 0.4. So if this is 0.4, we're told that these have to be equal to each other. So that's true. So A is true, B is true, C is true. Look at choice D, all of the above. So the answer to 76 is going to be D. And characteristic 1 and characteristic 2 are things that most people remember. Characteristic 3, people tend to just do without realizing that word, independent, is crucial. In order to do this, you must be told that the two events are independent. So if that doesn't happen, you can't do that. So that's why I think in 76 is important, is we tend to jump to do this without looking for these words of independence. So do be careful in those situations.